I think overall, like what you're bringing up, like happiness and mental health and these conversations, they used to be taboo, but I think it's gone so much into the mainstream now that like these are open conversations, like whether millennials and Gen Z and the generations after that, if you see what they want out of a workplace, it is more kind of openness of their own free time. They want to have some more time off and they want to work hard. And I think that there's a huge misconception when it comes to older generation look at younger generations as they're lazy or they're not trying to work. No, we're trying to work at things that we really care about, that we really value. We're going to put in the time and effort into it, but we also want happiness and balance in our life.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important conversation. Welcome to the Brew. Today we have ranging topics from organizational behavior to business models all the way down to the game industry. I'm today's host. My name is Saldivar. I'm the managing partner at Free Logic Media. Let's actually just jump right into our first topic. Actually, before we do that, we finally have AC here. We're hitting a heat wave in California. Yes, I just want to quickly bring that up because usually the studio is insanely hot. Right now it's nice and cool, so we're definitely appreciating that.
Nice.
Yeah, overall that's super nice, especially because it's like 170 degrees outside, so not a big fan of that.
No.
All right, so let's get started first into organizational behavior. I think this is actually a really important one with COVID-19, especially because it's really restructuring how companies should look at their own employee activities as well as overhead costs and all these factors. The very first one that I really want to talk about is should businesses actually adopt a 4-day work week? We'll be talking about a couple articles from The Week and from The Guardian, from Jeff Spross as well as Robert Booth. But before we get started on like those articles and what we read and kind of the topic matter with that, just a quick kind of conversation right up front is just what do you perceive out of a 4-day work week versus a 5-day work week? Or actually technically some companies 6 or 7-day work weeks. So
yeah, I think that there has to be like right off the bat has to be a very important differentiation between how employees are kind of looking at the 4-day work week. You know, like it's one thing to go from just a 5-day work week or 6-day work week, whatever it might be, and have this kind of expectation for results and expectation for output, and then just randomly spring up like, oh, by the way, you're just going to be working one less week. I think what needs to be in place is something where like the industry that you're in can thrive within a 4-day work week is like the important thing, like manufacturing and stuff like that. Like it unfortunately can't exist in a 4-day work week, but most office jobs I think would benefit from a 4-day work week throughout most of the year. Obviously there's going to be times like if you're an accountant, you're probably working 7-day weeks during tax season.
Yep.
But for the most part, I'm a big proponent of the 4-day week. Productivity goes up, happiness goes up, and why not? You know, if productivity's up and happiness is up and you're making more money by spending less hours, let's do it.
Definitely. What about you, Nico?
Yeah, I believe like at least in the US, the 5-day work week has always been a very standard thing, 40 hours minimum.
Yeah.
And usually the more, I guess, high up your job is, the more hours you end up working. Sometimes that becomes like 60-hour work weeks, that type of thing. And in other countries like India, for example, like you were saying, the 6-day work week is a very standard thing. And when I just think about that, it's kind of stressful, right? It's just like how, like 6 days, like why would I work one extra day, you know, and I only have 1 day to myself. And when you take another step back as well, a lot of people look forward to the weekend. Why? Because they're tired.
Yeah.
So when and let's take another step back, we're never fully productive in an 8-hour day or a 5-day work week. And that's because like things kind of just get dragged out and stuff. So I feel like there are multiple factors against a 5-day work week, and a 4-day work week should 100% be considered if approached the right way.
No, 100%. I think the conversation that really needs to be happening is on productivity. I think a lot of times when companies are looking at employee activities, they're looking at like financial standpoint. So they're looking at how many hours and what is the output that's coming out of it. And that's what they push workers to really put in these hours. But it's interesting to look at is that if you actually reduce the amount of days in a week you're working and there's still only 8-hour days, as long as the productivity is there, you actually might be getting more out of your employees. Yeah. So there's some studies that have existed that they've realized that out of like a 40-day work week, the average employee only actually works 25 hours out of that 40-day, like actually like fulfilling their role. versus if you're doing 8 hour weeks, 4 days, 8 hours a day. There you go. 32-hour weeks. That if they're closer and above that 25-hour productivity, that's actually better for the company. You're getting more ROI out of it, and you're not paying your employees as much. But the interesting thing was when it comes to an article on The Week written by Jess Ross, and he's talking about how in Japan, they actually tested this out. So what they did was they gave employees the Fridays off for 5 consecutive weeks. And what they actually found was that there was a 40% jump in sales. That's crazy. So what that shows is that those individuals are coming to work, they're making more out of their time there in work and actually being more energized, more productive. And I think that's a very important conversation to have, because it doesn't make sense to work endless hours if you're not still getting to that next milestone where you're trying to get into with your company and organization.
I think the one thing that's really surprising about this, when Microsoft is the one that did it in Japan, was, especially in sales, is when you think about like the timeline of the week, you know, you have like this, like by Wednesdays, I think midweek is when you're the most productive, like Tuesday through Thursday. I think that's like the core of your productivity. And that's because it's towards the middle. But if you're taking away the Friday, you're now bringing the finish line a little bit closer to that Thursday mark. So now what ends up happening is either the whole week is now a productive week, just based off of like that kind of logic of like Monday's kind of a wash. It's usually meetings. And then Friday usually same thing as a wash, because people are excited to be done with work. I think it's like a psychological thing. It's you're looking at it in a way where the finite time that you perceive in a work week is now a lot shorter, and because it's shorter, you feel like you feel a lot more engaged in getting the most out of that, squeezing the most out of that now that you're lacking that extra day. But another thing, the thing that I find the most interesting with this is, and it is the happiness factor that happened. Like, I think that is a real cool like KPI that a lot of this article kind of focused on, is the idea of like happiness was one of the factors that got brought up a lot. And I think that through happiness is how you get the rest of everything else. You get like optimization, you get better workflow, you get better processes, because, you know, if an employee's happy, if an organization is happy, they are more likely to actually care and actually put in the work that is required to do work at a higher degree. Absolutely.
I think overall, like what you're bringing up, like happiness and mental health and these conversations, they used to be taboo, but I think it's gone so much into the mainstream now that like these are open conversations. Like whether millennials and Gen Z and the generations after that, if you see what they want out of a workplace, it is more kind of openness of their own free time. They want to have some more time off, and they want to work hard. And I think that there's a huge misconception when it comes to older generations look at younger generations as they're lazy or they're not trying to work. No, we're trying to work at things that we really care about, that we really value. We're going to put in the time and effort into it, but we also want happiness and balance in our life. And I think that's an important conversation. And the other article, when it comes to The Guardian, written by Robert Booth, he talks about how the trials that they had in, what was it, New Zealand that they're testing? So in New Zealand, the happiness index went up, as well as less stress. And stress is a huge cause of massive problem when it comes to organizations, because people make mistakes. Those mistakes can be extremely costly. People they aren't performing to the level that you anticipate them. You might get high turnover rates because they're just not happy, and you have to get a new employee, and people don't understand the cost associated with getting a new employee and getting the skill sets up to par, the knowledge of the organization, all these factors. So as for organizational behavior, I think it's very important in the era we're in, especially with COVID-19, that companies really think about how they're paying their employees, as well as how they're giving them time off, these benefits, the work weeks, and how does that tie into their overall mission as a company. If you can tie those things together, I think that's really going to make a massive change and allow companies to really strive.
I think the big shift that's happening is when you think like even back, I think even like the silent generation, the baby boomers and Gen X, is it's this mentality of work hard and something will come of it. And what's happening now with the millennials and Gen Z is you can work hard, but also you should prioritize working smarter. And that's the divide, I think, is what's happening is we are working hard, but we're also trying to figure out ways to optimize the hard work that we're doing, to where you now take, I mean, you look back at like industrial areas, what was their work week looking like? Like what, and like you tell them, like back when like, you know, like Carnegie and all these people were happening, you tell them that we're not working a 40-hour work week, and they're like, oh, so lazy, you're only working a 40-hour work week. It's this thing where as generations go by, you figure out and you learn how to do things better, and you learn how to do things more effectively, more efficiently. And I think what's happening is that. And I think it's a big thing, man. It's like what's happening now with the generations that, I mean, I'm a millennial, so I love it, is there's a big prioritization in optimization, productivity, and then again, the big one for me is happiness.
Yep.
Which is why, like, you'll see people take the job that pays less, but they know they're going to be more happy in it, as opposed to the job that's going to pay them more, but might not be as happy in it. It's a common trend that's happening. And it's something that I think that speaks volumes to our generation and what we perceive as important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think ironically, society has been set up to focus so much on the growth of like business and I guess the economy, and I guess you could say hustle culture as well. Although while we value hustle, I think it's been idolized in the wrong way, and kind of people are going overboard. And so much focus has been on the businesses and not the people who are inside it. And in turn, we hear more about anxiety and depression and burnout and stress all the time. Again, dreading going back to work on Mondays and things like that. And I think if there was more of a balance where people have more time to just reset in the middle of the week, going back to the work won't be as such a dreadful thing,
Yeah, absolutely. And I can actually I think the counter argument to this is going to be very typical, is if you're building a company or an organization, you can't have the luxury of having people work 32 hours.
Yep.
And I think that obviously has its place, and don't get me wrong, if you're building out your venture, you definitely are going to have to put in hours and hours. Like I look tired, and I am tired because I've been working nonstop this entire week, and I have to do that to get our ventures moving forward. But I don't want to do that long term. That is not something I want to do, because it's not sustainable. But I think the important thing for entrepreneurs and other individuals to understand is that the person who creates a company, that is your passion, so it doesn't feel as much like work, and you can put in those hours. But there's no way you can put that same amount of pressure on an employee that doesn't have ownership stake in your company, that doesn't have anything else, and they're working for a paycheck, and expect them to perform at the same level as you when you actually get the capital gains of your own business. I think that's where the misconception comes from. Your employees, you should treat them separate from business owners and with different responsibility levels, and create a culture that really benefits everybody, and you kind of allow them to maximum productivity and performance and all these things. I think that's more beneficial. Honestly, I think a lot of companies are probably going to follow that model, because you can hire more individuals that are doing 32 hours a week and have more productivity out of X amount of employees, versus you only hiring one and stretching them thin and having them do 60 hours, because their productivity is going to just go down.
Yeah, I think ultimately when it comes to entrepreneurship, you as the entrepreneur, we as the entrepreneurs have this underlying passion and fire inside us to, build this thing out and, get to where we want to be. But, employees working for a brand new startup won't necessarily have that same passion, and it isn't fair on them to expect them to do the same thing, because they're not getting the same ROI either. Right. As entrepreneurs, though, I think, of course, it's like very important to still focus on that mental health, although the balance is a little less. And, I can attest to that. Like, yeah, I've definitely spent hours and hours on this thing along with you. And, but it was all done by a choice, I could have chosen to sit back and not done as much as I did, but, it pays off. There's many different arguments towards it. It's like, everyone just needs to find the balance that works best for them. But when it comes to the whole like organizational level, that does kind of like come down to the HR and the people running the thing as well.
Absolutely. Company values, the culture you build, all that. Yeah. I mean, and it kind of boils down to like something that Gary Vee says all the time, which is like, your focus should be happiness, not anything else. He obviously provides it in a lens of like working hard and hustling and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's the conversation should go towards happiness, but how does that then fit in with the organizational structure to still create profits? Companies only as good as the profits they can generate. Don't get me wrong, that is how companies are organized. That's the idea of a capitalistic market. But that being said, the conversation should shift a little bit more towards the employees. And I think if it does, we'll see more healthy companies, more sustainable companies, and honestly companies that next generations are going to align more with, and I think they're going to do a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So question, do you guys think that, and I haven't read anything on it, so I'm actually genuinely curious, like, companies that do 4-day work weeks, I keep getting the book confused, but 4-day work weeks, would they pay employees more per hour? So for example, if you're making $50,000, if you're making $50 an hour for 40 hours a week, would you still make $50 an hour, or would you make more, or would you make less?
It depends on the structure of the company. So some of them that are hourly wage, it wouldn't increase it at all. But so the companies that are doing salary, you get the benefit out of it, and you will, because that's how salaries work. But as for those that are hourly, they're not, but they're also more willing to then the starting wage to be a little bit higher. But it really goes, I think that question is kind of hard because it goes into a cost analysis. You have to know what stage you're at as a company and how much you can afford to pay. You have to be very careful about that, because as you hire employees, you can't just get rid of them. So it's not something that you just hire and kind of transition people out. It's more as in you hire, you train, you grow, start at some like certain threshold, and then you kind of invest more into them and pay them more as they grow with your organization. So I think that's really up to the company how they go about it, but I would hope that they pay a fair amount for the productivity. At the end of the day, I'd rather pay for the results that are given, not necessarily the hours that are worked.
I agree.
I think that's why when Microsoft did this in Japan, a very important thing to keep note of is that they did it with the sales team. That probably, more than likely than not, gets commission in some way, shape, or form. So their pay, I'm sure they have a base salary of like 50K or something like that, or 40K, and then everything additional after that is coming entirely from the commission of their sales. I think that's why they can kind of circumvent that whole kind of thing with that, because it's a sales team. If it's the perfect kind of group of people to do this test with. If it doesn't happen, if it doesn't go well, then their sales go down and they get less commission and they complain, and then they go back to the 5-day work week. But if it goes well, sales go up, they don't complain, and now they're selling way better.
I was going to say actually that I was pretty surprised that this happened in Japan, because Japan and other Asian countries like I guess South Korea are pretty well known for like the employees like working like crazy hard.
Falling asleep at the office.
Falling asleep on the streets. Literally, like I've seen, like with
at restaurants,
like
on the
tracings of
streets.
people. It's sad. It's really sad.
And that's what I'm saying is I think a lot of these companies have realized that they're just not getting the output that they want, and they had to restructure. Because economics prior to this has been looking at labor as a number of figure on a spreadsheet, and they realized that might not be the best approach to it. And I think it's changing, but I don't think it's larger companies are not going to change this model. Obviously, that's a hard organizational shift for them to do. But I'm hoping that more startups are implementing this, more kind of growth companies are implementing this. I think that's going to be a very, very important tie. And I think that actually really easily kind of perfectly kind of segues into our next topic, which is the conversation that's going on with Uber right now and the gig economy overall. Because the reality is the gig economy has a lot of potential and it can be great, because if you think about it, it opens up the flexibility that you're paying for the person instead of the organization. So if you need a videographer, you can hire a videographer. If you need a website designer, you can hire a website designer. It's for like independent tasks that benefits both the organization hiring as well as the independent contractor that's trying to get it. However, the issue then comes to organizations like Uber that literally create their entire business model around that. So when you're creating a business model and you're leveraging something that technically goes against policies, I think that's where the conversation gets a little in the gray zone.
Your company's entire market cap is based on human capital.
Exactly. And especially since that's only a milestone for them to get into automation where they no longer need people. So that's even a bigger problem that I have kind of with how Uber's going about it. Don't get me wrong, I still get Ubers. It's still the best form of transportation if I can't drive. And if you're going out with your friends and stuff like that, Uber is your decision. It was cheaper than taxis, and that industry needed to change. But now the question really comes down to is Uber is having kind of a fight with the state of California with the labor laws when it comes to contractual workers. So for those that don't know how the law works, is that anybody that you have in your organization that's doing a role that would be someone like an employee would be doing it. So for example, this kind of goes across the line. So like barbershops, the same thing is if everybody's doing the same role inside of it, they're an employee of that company and they have to be on payroll. They're not allowed to be a contractual worker, because what you're doing is you're getting away from payroll tax and you're not giving them benefits, and you're getting away from that system to then take advantage of it. It has its pros and cons. I think for small business like barbershops and stuff like that, this labor law does hurt them and it causes some problems. But a big scale company like Uber that their drivers are no longer doing this just part-time. They're not just driving every now and then to make some side cash. They're doing this for a living. It created an entire infrastructure around that business model. So the reality is that, or I guess the question that's really coming down to is, should Uber pay these employees that are not employees or contract workers any benefits if they're doing it nonstop?
Here's my very hot take on this. Yes. Uber would not exist without these people. Eventually, and Uber wants this, and I think everyone wants this. Lyft, Waymo. They all want this, where it's going to be entirely automated. You just push a button, and a completely automated car goes, picks you up, and takes you to your destination. Sure, that's going to be amazing when it happens. Until it's not, but it's going to be good when it happens. But right now, Uber, Lyft, anyone else, they would not exist if not for the people, the humans, that are the ones that are actually taking people from point A to point B.
Absolutely.
So I think it's like the thing that gets me is like I have the Uber app on my phone, and I use Uber seldomly, but I do use it. I'm much more on Lyft than I am on Uber, just because I think Lyft does try a little bit harder. Like, this law came in, and to my knowledge, Lyft wasn't like outright like, no, we're not going to abide by this and we're just going to leave California. They were like, all right, well, let's start getting some stuff in place, you know. And they explored how to kind of do this in a way that's going to be efficient while still following the law, you know. As opposed to Uber. And I mean, you look back even like at the roots and at how Uber came about. I mean, Lyft was first, and then Uber said, ooh, what if we did that but for rich people? And that's how Uber came around. And that's why Uber Black was like the first Uber. That was just for like celebrities and everybody that wanted to get rides, and like completely tinted out Escalades and stuff like that, so they can get taken away. And that's kind of how that came about. And then they said, I guess we can give it to regular people and see how that goes, you know. So I think it speaks a lot of, like, you even look back at like how it was founded, what their mentality was going in, and what it is now. I mean, they're very much, I hate to use the word exploitive, but I mean, if they are, I mean, they're for sure a $1 billion industry, right? $1 billion company. If they're in the realm of like the big B in front of their market cap, then, you know, they should have no issues with doing something like this, where they're giving people at least the options to have some kind of health benefits, some kind of PTO, anything, honestly, like literally anything, because right now they're doing absolutely nothing.
I like what Lyft did too. I actually got an email from them.
Oh, with the free rides?
No.
Oh,
acknowledging what's happening.
Oh, yeah.
Which gained my respect. But I think it should happen for like the people who are basically living off of like driving. But I think what I'm foreseeing is that Uber and Lyft aren't going to be as, I mean, they're going to become more expensive.
They're going to have to.
They're going to become, it gets passed down to the consumer all the time. It's always passed down to the consumer.
So they're going to become more expensive. They're going to become less available. And I think there's going to be a rise in traditional taxi companies, like, because the reason I say that is because I've seen traditional taxi companies start to pick up like, or start creating like apps and stuff similar to Uber and Lyft.
So yeah, I mean,
the yellow cap code and everything.
Yeah, so to that point, I definitely think there's going to be, the reason why I want more pressure to be put on Uber and Lyft is that it opens the market opportunity for companies to come up. I wouldn't say it's the traditional taxi. It's kind of like their own kind of customized business, but it's at least like a community kind of oriented, and like they have their own employees and they build their own business and they can have their own ethical practices and all these things. As for like employee benefits, I think if someone's driving 32 hours a week plus, they should get benefits. At that point, you're a full-time, you know, worker for Uber. You're helping that business model. You're making it so that it's convenient for people. You're building that community, and there should be like a rating score. So obviously you should have an X amount of like stars, ratings, and Ys, and tons of benefits. They can compromise in some areas. I understand why Uber is pushing back, because they don't make profit. They're still a negative company. So what they're looking at is how do they get to their next milestone, which is the automation side, and how can we afford that entire product model. My issue just really comes down to is that if they were betting on their business model being something that was technically unethical, it's like, it's not, you can't make that argument just saying like, because you're doing this, it's hurting our business. It's like, well, you made it's somebody else made a business that was against the law. They they can't make that argument either. So it's not like you get special privilege just because you're a massive $1 billion company. So it's a hard conversation. I think there's going to be some compromise there because California is going to look at it as like, look, you are creating, taxes for us. Like we're benefiting from you guys being here. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I don't think that Uber is going to get everything. I don't think the state's going to get everything. I do think that the state is going to go a little bit more towards Uber just because I think Uber is going to have that leverage over them. But I think if these more independent, smaller businesses come up, that conversation might change a little bit. But as of right now, I just don't see there being that big of a swing because I think Uber just has a lot of power when it comes to that overall kind of entity of transportation.
Yeah, it's tough. It's one of those things where like in a perfect world, you would want to give people, like if someone's making you money, and obviously like you can look at a person's return to your company. That's like so easily like analyzable. Like you can so easily analyze, I should say, but you could like get a specific person, look at how much they're driving versus how much they're making, and you can use all these kind of metrics, whatever they have to do in order to give like that top 20% at least benefits, like to give that top 20% that might be making them, 2-3x return on any kind of money. But I just think it's maybe not the best move long term to do stuff like this. But like again, it's one of those things to where you really just have a duopoly when it comes down to ride shares. And it's like, yeah, maybe Lyft gets more usage through this, but at the end of the day, I still have the Uber app on my phone because sometimes there is no Lyfts just in case. Yep. And that's what it comes down to. It's like I will try my hardest to not use it, and I'll use Lyft every single time that I can. But there have been times where there is just no Lyfts, and then it's gonna take an hour for a taxi to get to an airport, which blows my mind that it's a thing that can happen, or take you to an airport.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean it's bad overall. I know Uber's still in the red. Like a lot of companies, a lot of big startups like this, they have never turned a profit.
Nope.
But I think that they have to figure it out. I mean, I know they're investing just metric tons of money and capital and resources into creating these like completely autonomous vehicles, which is probably why they're not making a profit. But I think it's definitely something that they have to explore, and something that California is making. Thankfully, California is making them explore here in the state.
Yep. And like I said, it's the reason why it's kind of a hard conversation. I get why there's like even small business owners push back on the law on it, because it makes it hard for like early stage companies to, have like barbershops or salons to have individuals inside of their stores. Yeah. But at the end of the day, the reality is they're not trying to hurt these companies. They are trying to protect the workers, the employees, and I think sometimes that just gets forgotten in the conversation because it comes a money game. So it's important to look at these policies, how it impacts your business, following as well as you can down to the T of what it is, and then adjusting your business model to it. There's ways that you can adjust your business model to still benefit even from these labor practices. So I think companies really just need to look at down to how they're creating the revenues, and then from there looking at how can they benefit everybody's involved to actually build that company and push it forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that ends up happening that is happening right now with the gig economy is it's like everything that is kind of created through innovation. Is something gets created that's a completely like massive disturbance in a specific industry, and there's a massive gold rush towards that one industry. There is zero regard for who is in the way, what is in the way. It's just, it gets built. Like there's something that is not there one day, and then 2 months later there is a $1 billion business sitting there in that industry, about to just take it captive. And I mean, it's one of those things where like, if that's how you're building the business, and that's how we're all trained to build a business, especially here in the States, is like you're trained to just go in, optimize for return, optimize for ROI, and that's it really. Like no matter how you get that return, no matter how you make your money, what you have to focus on is turning a profit, making money, and then worry about giving to charity for tax breaks. It's like that's kind of like what's kind of ingrained, especially, I mean, all three of us graduating from business school. It's like that is something that's taught, like what Milton Friedman's kind of mentality of capitalism and how it's kind of going.
Line.
Exactly. Worry about the bottom line. Everything else is secondary.
Yep. And CSR became a thing, but it became a thing after the fact because of public opinion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's what's happening, and that's with anything. That's just going to continue to happen. Any industry that is disturbed or like ruptured in a big way, you're going to have like these massive groups of people that are going to go and just create this thing no matter what to make money out of it. And then whatever happens after that, they'll deal with the legal repercussions as they come.
Yep. No, I definitely agree with your take on that. And once again, I think that's a good segue into the next conversation, because talking about like kind of big companies and the pushback and business models and stuff like that is, as of right now, for those that do not know, there's a huge battle between Epic Games, owned by Tencent, or major shareholder Tencent, as well as Apple. And Apple was in the hearings that we talked about on our previous podcast, and kind of talking about the winners and losers of that hearing. Pretty much the winners were all the companies and the losers were the people. But overall, the important thing to understand about Apple is just how they work with their App Store. The way that it works is that there's a 30% and 70% cut. So the developer of any application that puts it on the App Store, you get 70% cut. Apple gets 30%, which is a huge cut. Their argument for that is that it's without that app store, you wouldn't be able to have products and provide in front of the consumer. But the reality is that they have no competing app stores or anything like that. They have their own monopoly. So if you have an iPhone, you go into the App Store. If you have, that really creates the market so that a game like Epic Games for Fortnite, they're gonna make it for that device, and they're gonna have to get that 30% cut. So the question really comes down to the power of the gaming industry overall, and what pressure they can really put on like these companies such as Apple. So to understand how like hardcore this beef is, what Epic Games did, I don't know if you've seen the commercial yet, but like you both seen the commercial, right? Like they literally took Apple's famous commercial, 1984, and they straight up took Fortnite, and that is not just a
shot remake.
Literally, it was fantastic. But here's the thing that blew my mind. It's not just the commercial that they put on YouTube. That's when you open up Fortnite now.
It plays.
You have little 6-year-olds that are playing Fortnite. The first thing they're gonna see is that, and it's like almost like
if you go to the movie theater in Fortnite, the game, it's playing in a loop.
There's a movie theater in the game.
Yeah, there is. There's Fortnite. They're smart. They're genius when it comes to what they're doing. But man, when I saw that, I was like, wow, they're really trying to put it at Apple. But now here comes the reality. Is Apple gonna really budge? Because even though Epic Games is massive, even though mobile gaming is the fastest growing industry right now, and most profitable in the gaming industry overall, it's mobile gaming.
Oh,
massive. Makes up over I believe 60% of just gaming revenues is mobile gaming.
The money that flows through mobile and hyper casual games is obnoxious.
Yeah, because of microtransactions, all these other things, just buying the game. So obviously, it's a huge blow for Epic Games at the same time not being on this app store, but it's a huge blow for Apple because they're missing out on that 30% cut that they could be getting. So now it comes down to the conversation of, is this something that Apple is actually going to budge on? So a good article on this topic is by The Verge, by Nick Stat. And one thing that was really kind of brought on there was how Epic actually was trying to go about the process of their application. So they're actually using the App Store as a so the reason why they got banned was they're using the App Store as a download mechanism to then create their own application onto the phone to get away from the 30%.
So they had a thing called Epic Payments within the app itself. So normally you would buy V-Bucks and then it would prompt you through Apple's built-in payment thing. Well, now it's sent you instead to a different one that basically was just hey, you could pay through Apple, and for $10 you can get I think it's 1,000 V-Bucks, something like that. But they were or
$7.99.
Exactly. You $6.99. You can pay $6.99 and you'll get the same thing, but you have to pay through our store.
So is it I have an Android, so what I know on Android is that when I downloaded Quibi for the first time, it there was a Google Play pop up and it asked me to it had my Google Pay information in there already. I just had to swipe right or whatever. Is it something like that for Apple? And it was you either choose this or you choose this one?
Yeah, but with Apple, it's not you choose this or that. It's you choose Apple Pay.
Whatever. Or sorry, in Fortnite, it was either you choose the Apple one.
They find a loop around they find a loophole to make that happen. But the crazy part is, Google banned it as well. So Google Play Store also banned it right after, and because they were trying to do the same loophole for Google Play Store. So the reality really comes down to is Epic Games is trying to find the loophole so that they're making their money, right? At the end of the day, they wouldn't be on these platforms without Apple or without Google Play Store and stuff like that. So the question really comes down to is who's in the right, who's in the wrong. I honestly think both companies are kind of in the right and the wrong, but the reality is this going to actually put pressure on Apple to actually make a change?
So I've been saving my take on this because I really want to talk about this, because I think I don't want to come off as kind of like a Nostradamus of what's going to happen here, but what's really going to happen here is, and you can go back to this tape if I'm right, because I want to sell this. Yeah, I want to sell this. Yeah, I want to sell this to anyone for consulting fees. So here's what I legitimately think is going to happen. Epic is gonna, well, they already put the litigation forward against Apple. Apple is already under the hot seat with like the antitrust committee in the US. So they're just looking for an excuse to do anything to one of the big four companies that they brought in, anything at all. So I think what's going to happen here is Apple's big case is going to be like, this is what we need in order to be able to, the same thing that they did last time. It's like, oh no, only, what is it, like 87% of apps are free and they don't get charged a dime, and the other 13% are the ones that we end up charging for. So we're doing a good thing because we're not charging these smaller developers to do this stuff. We're only charging the bigger developers who are making all this money, which I agree with you. Don't charge small, charge big. But I think what's going to happen with Epic is they're going to litigate the fact that iPhones can and have, through jailbreaking, been able to side boot apps. And there's a law in place that now makes it so if you own your device, like I own my iPhone, we all own our phones, we can jailbreak them because that's technically our device. It's not our software, but because it's our device, we can load whatever software we want onto it and whatever side loading things. Obviously, it voids Apple's warranty if you do that kind of stuff, which is why I always have a backup. Always start from backup if you take it to the Apple Store. I've done it plenty of times. But I remember back in the day with Amazon, when they took Amazon off the App Store, I had Cydia and I just side booted Amazon onto my phone.
When did they take Amazon off of the App Store?
For a while, it was just like not there.
When?
Like it's like 20, not 20. It was like 2000. God, it's been a while. It's like 2008.
Oh,
early. Yeah.
Cydia, I haven't heard that in a long time.
Yeah. So I used their side booted Amazon because it was better. It was like legitimately like a way better Amazon. Like it lets you play, it would let you actually download apps and do a bunch of other stuff. I digress. I think what Epic's going to do is they're going to show that there has always been a potential for there to be a side bootable app store, and that happens through Cydia, and Cydia is free to use and free to happen on a phone. Obviously, it avoids the warranty, but legally speaking, anyone can do it. It's a consumer right to be able to do that kind of stuff. So I think that's what their defense is going to be, along with the fact that they just end up buying their acqui-hires. Apple, these big companies, they'll just buy companies that are even coming up a little bit for dirt cheap, relatively speaking, because they would rather have the technologies that are there in place than not do it at all. And it's one of those things where like it happens so often that it just, no one ever talks about it. But the amount of buying that Apple does with smaller companies is so rampant some years, especially when they know that they're going to start developing what's their what are they called, the new thing that's going to happen with the codes, with the app snaps or app snippets with the new thing that they're going to do with snippets. There was probably so many companies that they bought up that no one had ever heard about because there's like 10 people teams that they bought for like a couple $10 million. That's chump change for Apple. They probably just have that in like a drawer somewhere, that allowed those technologies to actually happen. So they're going to argue that they're buying all these companies, they're monopolistic in the fact that they're not allowing other stores and other transactions to happen throughout their actual application natively. Again, I think that's going to be what takes Apple down. It's the fact that you can technically have other side bootable things and it's legal. There's precedent behind that. And the fact that call it what you will, that they're only 83% or whatever it is, 87% isn't being charged, but it's still a monopoly. Like if I can only go to one store to get my groceries, that is a monopoly. Like, and that's what Apple is. But I mean, you replace groceries with apps and that's it,
So is that 87% all apps that do not even have microtransactions, or
it's all apps? All apps. So that's the big blanket statement. It's like it's not.
So 87% of apps in the App Store have no microtransactions.
Well, some of them, I'm sure that some of them in that 87% do, but they don't charge them. They were blanket
charge
statement.
up front.
They don't charge
at all.
in general.
At all.
At all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they don't take anything off the transaction. So if like
Interesting.
So that's one of the reasons why like
it would be chunk change for them anyways. That 13% is going to make them so much money than any of the small developers, and they need the small developers to sustain their app store. So it's kind of it's a smart move.
Yeah, I think like Flappy Bird back in the day,
It made an enormous amount of money.
Because it went from nothing, an app not on Apple's radar, not going through the transaction process or anything like that, and I think he was making like 87 grand a day or 87 grand every few hours.
The developer?
He was making
the developer.
He made
one dude.
He made 87,000. So it's a single person made the whole thing.
Bless his
He
heart.
made $87,000 a day, and he was grossing up to $1 million a month. And he pulled it. He's just like, this is just dumb. This is.
He's like, this wasn't my intention.
Yeah, that's what he pulled. I mean, and a lot of people say that he pulled it because he was like scared of like all of like this growth, and he got like flustered and stuff like that. But I think partially what happened too is like Apple probably reached out to him and was like, hey man, get ready to cough up a lot of money. And he was like, bye. And he just like he peaced out, you know? Like why not? Like if Apple, like I'm sure he still had to pay Apple for, I think they have it to where there's a revenue threshold, I think is how they go about it. So if you're making over a certain threshold of money via the app, that's when they charge you money. And I'm sure he hit that. And he left before he kept making more.
He left with grace before the game went to crap. I think he did a good choice.
You either you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Wait, so were there microtransactions in that game too, or
no, just ads?
Ads.
He was just making
it was
that
really
much money
annoying with
on
ads, but that was a game I was fine with ads because I was so obsessed with that game. I think I passed like 300 on it. Was just dumb. I was literally just in class and it was like, he's breaking it.
He's just a crowd behind you, just all excited.
Yeah, that's thank you, Mr. Hendricks. That was an economics class. I did learn a lot in economics, by the way, but that Flappy Bird, man, that's next level stuff.
So you can download the Fortnite app like online, right? At least on Android.
So you can
because you can always side boot on Android.
You can always do side boot,
but not on Apple.
You can no, you cannot.
Unless you have a Cydia.
Yeah.
Okay, because I think I do remember that when the Fortnite app first came out, it wasn't on the Play Store. It was like side booted.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of the reasons why, like, if you go Netflix, I think Hulu, and I want to say HBO Max as well.
They make you pay on the website.
They make you pay on the website because why would they give Apple 30% of a monthly recurring revenue when they could just be like, hey, go to, like, they don't explicitly say like it's money because they legally can't do it because Apple will be like, hey, you're telling them to go to your website, but they make it so where like you click like sign up now, and then you go like, oh, you need to put in payment information. Like they send you to like this web page that doesn't explicitly say finish your application online, but it's kind of like, hey, you know, go to the website if you want to kind of wrap this thing up, because they don't want to pay the 30%.
Okay. So like Netflix, for example, does it like open up your browser basically?
No, I think they can't do that because if it opens up the browser, that's you taking them away from Apple's ecosystem in order for you to do that.
So they make you like log in by yourself.
They make you exactly. Yeah, they make you make the decision.
So are there any stats on if that's potentially making them lose out on some customers?
I'm sure that they ran so many cost analysis on that, and like the 30% just is so much
big that,
it just makes up for it, whatever kind of lost revenue.
Yeah, when I found that out, I was like, oh damn, I didn't even know that was happening. So
yeah, it's a thing that a lot of companies hate Apple for it. I always tackle this like thing in my head of like, do you charge more when you're small or do you charge less when you're small? I think it's always the thing that happens kind of in your head. And I think one thing that Apple did very intelligently is they haven't changed the pricing model since the beginning, because they knew that they were gouging the crap out of them at the beginning, and they were like, okay, we can't move this up or down, because at 30% at the beginning of the App Store, when realistically speaking, it was so new and no one even knew what to do with it, and you were already charging people 30% up front. That's ridiculous if you think about it. Like a new platform that just happened, that no one's even making things for, brand new, someone says, hey, cool, welcome, give me 30% of your money. Outrageous, the fact that was happening. But now that it's so matured and developed, 30% kind of doesn't seem like a lot, but it is. It's a big chunk.
It's just a third of your profits getting drained down. You have to put that in your cost structure. I mean, I know because Apple was they're trying to crack down on like a little hack that you can do on like app stores and stuff like that. Is you just create an application that then opens the web browser extension. Apple started cutting those apps out because it's not an app. Like that's not an app. Like that's a super easy way of going about it.
WEP apps or whatever they're called.
It's super easy to do. You just set up an application and you just set it up that it literally just opens the browser when people click on it. Super simple. Everybody calls it an app. It's not an app. It's literally just a shortcut.
Yep. Shortcut on the homepage.
But it's a smart move because then a company can be like, oh, I got this cool application, and you go and it actually goes to their website, and people have it on their phone. So honestly, it is a smart move. But I understand why Apple would cut those out because that is trying to literally just take advantage of their platform. Yeah. But then also I understand why those are getting created because getting cut 30%, that's a lot, especially for any kind of revenue generation you can get from that application. So I think it's a hard conversation. I think overall, Epic Games, they're also kind of in a bad situation because they're owned by Tencent, the executive order that went through. They're also kind of in the hot seat. So I think there is kind of political pressure that gets pushed on Epic Games as well as political pressure put on Apple. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens with it. I hope what happens out of it really is that if Apple even slightly moves, that would cause a huge problem for them because then they're gonna have to make an adjustment for everybody else. The reality, I just think, is Apple's not gonna really move much, but Epic Games are gonna find a loophole to it and keep going forward.
Yeah, no, I think that Apple's not gonna budge, Epic's not gonna budge, and U.S. courts are gonna side with Epic and do something about Apple. Whether they come to an agreement where they charge less on a monthly base, off the top. So instead of 30%, maybe they bring it down to like 20% or maybe even half of that. Or they literally just say you have to be able to allow side bootable apps and other transactions to happen within your ecosystem, which, I mean, say what you will, but one of the, and like, again, I'm gonna sound like an Apple evangelist again, but like one of the reasons why it's so, like, one of the nice things that happens with Apple controlling everything is you don't have to worry about any kind of bad actors happening or any kind of like encryption issues with payments. They're pretty secure with their payments and how it's going. I mean, everything is a unique string for every transaction. So I mean, it's nice to know that that's secure. Like Apple Pay and all that stuff is pretty good. I don't know how secure Epic Games servers are, but I'm sure they're hackable. I'm sure they, every server is hackable to some extent, but I'm saying it's one of those things like, yeah, Epic Games is a big company and that's all fine and dandy. But if you get down to like the mom and pop app that someone made because they don't want to have, like, think about it like this, like break it down to like a very simple thing. Let's say like a mobile app developer knows how to develop something fairly quickly that can have transactions built in through like Stripe or through something like that, or maybe something like Home Baked. And this whole like COVID-19 is happening right now. Maybe they don't want to go through DoorDash because, again, of the transaction fees that happens, and I think it's also like 30-35% happens through DoorDash and Uber Eats and all this stuff here. So then they go, well, I don't want to do that. So what I'll do instead is I'll go to this like smaller developer that will make me something that I have Stripe built in. I have all these things kind of built in. Now you have to worry about, like, Stripe is secure, it's through PayPal, it's all stuff. But if you're going more with like a home baked kind of transaction thing, like maybe Stripe is too expensive, maybe you don't like what they're doing, so you look around on the internet and you find some cheap alternative that maybe doesn't have those security protocols in place that Stripe or that PayPal, any of these bigger ones have, Square and everything like that. So now you're kind of opening yourself up to having this application that's on the App Store that's collecting data, collecting payments, collecting credit cards, debit card information that is susceptible to hacking.
Yep, and you're not fault.
Exactly.
You're liable for all that.
Apple is 100% liable for all that. So I get why Apple's been so closed off about transactions, because at the end of the day, I kind of repeat what they say to some extent. They're not a information company. They're a hardware company. That's what separates them from like an Alphabet, an Amazon, and those big ones. Like they're not out to collect data and use it to get more customers. They're just out to create hardware and software. That's it.
Yeah, they're product oriented, not data oriented. So
exactly.
I think that's an interesting take.
That's my prediction, though. You heard it here first.
You heard it here first on the Brew podcast.
Doesn't Apple charge pretty much every app, even the completely free ones, like a fee to even be on the App Store. Like $100 every whatever year or every month or something like that. Something ridiculous.
I'm not sure, honestly.
I always thought
They
that
might
there
have
was,
they might have a setup fee, but I don't think it's anything ridiculous.
Okay, because I thought it was. Because I was gonna say that because of that. If that was true, then I'm like surprised at how many apps are actually on the App Store. Like, because a lot of them are kind of just collecting dust.
It's $100 a year. It's nothing.
Okay, that's not too bad.
Yeah, that's nothing. That's literally super cheap. That's less than hosting, because you got to think of it.
Yeah.
Whose servers are going to be on?
Yeah.
They got to have a cost, and I think Apple, all they're doing is just making sure that they're not losing money on you having an app on their own Play Store. So I think Apple really has thought through obviously their cost structure. And to your point, I think them putting 30% from the start, it was both a kind of a smart move, a very aggressive move, but from there, it's like, why budge? Like, why change it if it has been from the start? They have not changed one thing.
Yeah.
If they've gone up, I think there's an argument that they would lose. If they went down, then people would keep pushing them down.
Yep.
So it's a hard conversation. I don't think there's an easy, like, this side's gonna win, this side's gonna win. I just think it's interesting to me overall, just because how big the gaming industry is, how powerful it is, and then looking at how Apple is reacting to it. I think it's going to say a lot about how, mobile gaming, apps, and all these things are going to kind of go into the future. Just kind of seeing what this conversation in the next couple of months is going to be like.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this a lot like how when Google and Apple sued each other, and it was just this like petty back and forth, just like someone would win at a lower court, then they would take it to a higher court, and then they would win at that court, and they would appeal it and go back to the lower court, and they were just back and forth and back and forth. I think that wait, was it them? Who was it that sued Apple for the layout of apps, like the grid? I think
Somebody
it was
sued Apple for that.
Dude,
Yeah.
they get sued for everything.
Yeah, I think it was Google, or someone sued Google, or someone sued Apple for copying the grid layout of the apps. And I forget who won.
No. So it was Apple actually sued Samsung.
Oh, okay.
It went the other way. They've had, Apple and Samsung have a lot of back and forth when it comes to the IP inside of the device, the way that they've built it, the styling of it. I mean, Samsung and Apple,
It's one of those things where
consistently
like,
go back and forth on that.
yeah, I mean, the one that I don't understand, and I get why they're not suing them and all this stuff, but like, is it Xiaomi? Yeah, Xiaomi makes like literal Apple clones, like of hardware and slightly of software.
Yeah.
And every time I see them, like the Xiaomi MateBook,
Yeah.
I look at them like, what the fuck, dude? Like it's an entire clone.
Did they sell them in the States though?
That's the thing. I think you have to buy. You have to go to like something else to get them here. They don't directly sell them in the States. So I think that's their workaround.
Yeah, that wouldn't fly here.
No,
otherwise.
definitely not.
So in 2018, there's a verdict, and they got Apple $539 million from Samsung because of
Didn't Samsung
patent.
pay him in like pennies or something like that?
It was pennies because the patent battle initially resulted. So it was in 2011, Apple got $1 billion in their favor, resulting in it, and it actually went all the way to the Supreme Court. Then there was a couple cases involving the design, the utility patents that had to do with like tab zoom functions, the app grid, all those fundamentals that got $539 million additional dollars from Apple. It's just crazy. Like these lawsuits are like, oh, and another 2014, Apple won another $120 million. So this is why, ladies and gentlemen, when you build a venture, make sure to protect your patents like crazy, because other companies will jump in the second they see an opportunity, and if they mimic anything you do, at least cash in another check from it. You know.
Yeah.
It's a
So
win-win.
no, Samsung did not try to pay Apple in coins. I thought they did. It was a meme apparently.
Billion what, pennies?
Yeah.
Billions of dollars in pennies. That
Yeah.
would
I
be.
couldn't believe that would actually happen. Like that's so petty.
Yeah. Why not though? It's like, just go for litigation, go for anything that you can. It's one of those things where like it's funny to me, like even with like Epic Games like 2 years ago, sure, like that I'd be like, yeah, rah, go little guy, you know. But like Epic Games now,
It's not a little raw.
no, they're massive. They're a huge company. So it's like now you just have like these like billionaires just like tossing, like sitting on top of like ivory towers, just like screaming at each other from the towers, just like tossing money down at like lawyers and like all these like municipalities in order to get their way. You know, it's like it's funny. It's at the end of the day, this either is going to do absolutely nothing, or it's going to open up the Apple ecosystem a little bit more. It's gonna create a little hole in that walled garden that I love so much.
I honestly see a potential of them having to split the app stores. Like there's apps and then there's like a gaming store, just because how powerful mobile gaming is becoming. that could be something that can kind of push on it, and it would have a different transactional limit to it. So instead of being 30%, it's a 20% system and stuff like that. So I think that's very important. I think overall, do you guys have any closing thoughts before we kind of end it? This is a show with a new segment that we're going to end every show with. Do you guys have any other final closing thoughts on the 3 topics we talked about today?
Let's go back to them. I'm going to give you one sentence.
One sentence for each.
One sentence for each thing. Alrighty, should businesses adopt? Actually one word. I'm gonna go even more. Should businesses adopt a 4-day work week? Yes. Uber wants to keep making people work countless hours while taking zero responsibility for benefits. Bad. Epic Games calling out Apple on their anti-competitive practices. Yikes. Those are my 3 takes.
I guess I'll do the same things. Should your business adopt a 4-day work week? Probably. Uber wants to keep making people work countless hours while taking zero responsibility for benefits. They started a movement, but we need some change. Epic Games calling out Apple, fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why not, dude?
Yeah, no, I think it's just overall interesting to see what's going on right now, especially like we're still in COVID. I think all the times that gets like forgotten, and like this is the news that's consistently happening. These are the massive changes that are happening in industries. It's all happening behind the scenes. So I think it's interesting to see how the dynamic swap is happening so fast. The question is it actually going to happen?
Who knows?
We don't know, but yeah, no, definitely to your guys' points.
I know, but
we'll reflect on this in the future. But to close out the show, what we're gonna start doing going forward is that we're actually gonna end the show always with a failure story. So today's podcast, I'll give a lovely failure story of my own. In the next few podcasts, we're gonna hear a story from Nikhil and hear a story from Luis and from our guests. But today's failure story is going to go back into what we've been talking about for entrepreneurship overall. We're going to close the laptop, so that's the thing. All right. So
we're going to pressure you or anything.
No, it's cool. It's like I got all the attention for my failure story here. Yeah. But I think failure stories, especially everything we talk about, is so important because we're talking a lot about how organizations, how things are changing, how businesses are growing, opportunities. Us as entrepreneurs, we take full risk whenever we're doing something, and it's very important to understand that. It's not always success. You always hear kind of the success, but the reality is there's so many failures prior to it. So the idea of this segment really is to just kind of break down the reality of failures that can come up, what people go through, and then how do you bounce back from that. So the failure story I'm going to bring up is actually when I got back from Hong Kong my sophomore year. And this is back when I used to still like compare myself to other people. And that's something that a lot of people tend to, challenge themselves with, is they put comparisons and see where other people are with jobs and opportunities and how they're growing versus where you're at currently.
Yeah.
So when I got to Hong Kong and when I was leaving Hong Kong, I was looking for a summer internship, second year. I knew I wanted to get like a good internship. It's my second year, so I need to kind of get something going. No idea what I was trying to do, so I was applying to a bunch of companies. And at the same time, I was building my kind of t-shirt printing company, logo company. So what ended up happening was every single place I applied to, every single place rejected me. Completely from the start to the finish. Every single place said, nah, like you're not qualified for working here. You're not a good fit. And obviously that's kind of hard because like you're applying to all these places and you're not getting anywhere. Finally, I got an internship job, and I already knew that it was sketchy because it was like, it seemed like a pyramid scheme kind of thing. And I was like, man, I don't know about this. It wasn't a pyramid scheme, but it was as close as a pyramid scheme as you could possibly get, which is direct marketing. And it's like the kind of roadshow style stuff that you see out inside of Costco and like when you go to different events. So I got that opportunity and I was just like, all right, cool. It's something, might as well. I still completely felt like a failure because every single company I wanted to get to, I got rejected from them. And at that exact same time, I realized that like my t-shirt printing business and my logo design business, that wasn't going well. So it kind of all hit me at the same time. As like, okay, this doesn't work. I failed at all this. Let's see what's up. So I started that job, and when I started there, I was already like, okay, this is terrible. I'm gonna be inside of Costco and I'm gonna be selling everything from car wax to dumplings to bed sheets. But I was just like, all right, let's just make the most of it. I felt like a kind of a failure. I'm not where I thought I was gonna be at that point in time with my progression. But then what I realized that I should do is live in the moment and actually take advantage of that. Even it's an opportunity. I'm still getting paid for something. I'm still doing something. So even though it was hard on my ego to like be inside of a Costco and literally do a demo on like how this car wax is amazing and like buying it. I took that as an opportunity to really start learning how to talk with customers, how to build relationships, and no better place to do that instead of Costco with like really crazy people that like yell at you for no reason, and like selling dumplings to bed sheets and all these things. So I took this time that I felt really down and I felt like I wasn't able to do anything. And honestly, that point was a huge trajectory moment for me, because that next year I got into my junior year of college, became like the PCT president, started getting more active in organizations, started taking more classes. That summer showed me what I never want to do for work, ever. So I took that failure, and what I realized is that it wasn't a fit for me. I didn't feel as if I was, personally at the level of growth I wanted to be at professionally and personally. And I, instead of really being down on it, I actually celebrated that, embraced it, took that time, really reflected that summer, realized that if I want to get where I want to get to, I have to really put in that work. It's not enough for me to have these credentials on my resume and doing some stuff and building a business fraternity. I'm going to randomly get an internship or a job somewhere. These companies don't care. And the reality is that moment, what I did to really like mentally focus again was that's when I started learning not to compare myself to other people, and the philosophy of learning not to give a fuck. Because at the end of the day, your progression or your progress, what you're trying to do for a roadmap, is up to you as an individual. It is not up to other people to judge, or you relating to other people. So what this story is really trying to show as a failure is sometimes you might expect something and you might go for something that you really ambitious about and you want to get this job or this internship, and you might just end up not getting anything that you want. But it's more important in that time to really reflect on it and take the time to really understand maybe why you didn't get it. And instead of taking it as a failure, take a step back and then plan out what you want to do next. Don't take it as it's a wall. Take it as in you kind of now are building your pathway and what is the next thing and the next thing you have to do. So that's my failure story. I have plenty more to share as we go forward, but that was a failure story because a lot of people don't know that I actually started as a lifeguard, then I worked in direct marketing, and that's when it started propelling into jobs like PepsiCo and Esri and these things. Things don't come easy. You have to put in the work, and then you have to appreciate that you're going to fail sometimes. Take it as it is. Don't take it too personally. Reflect on it, and then keep moving forward.
That's awesome. I think this is powerful because it's like it really shows that taking baby steps and taking things one thing at a time, even though it's not really the step that you think that you're supposed to be taking, how important that is. And I'm sure it taught you sales, and now you're pretty good at sales. So
yeah, it definitely taught me things I never expected to learn.
Yeah,
and it taught it because I hated it, to be honest. So it showed me like the worst job that I've heard people do is like the door-to-door sales for like internet or like solar. And I know like I have like people in PCT and stuff like that, they've had those jobs, but because of that, it's actually made them so like thick-skinned and strong that now they can take on almost any role. So I mean, really the idea there of the story is just that you might not get what you want to do like in that stage, but don't take it as that's a permanent state you're in. Take it as in, look, I kind of messed up. I'm not where I'm at, quote unquote, but reflect on that and then figure out where you want to go, because we're all young. I mean, even if you're not time, you have time. So might as well use that time to propel yourself forward and really get to where you want to get to.
I have a question.
All right.
What was the craziest Costco experience you had?
Ooh. All right. Let's see. So I have one for bed sheets, and then I have one for car wax. Which one you want?
All right.
The car wax or the bed sheet story?
The crazier one.
Yeah, I want the crazier one.
Okay.
Have to move the mic back.
So the craziest experience I had for car wax, and I just was confused the whole time when I heard this, was this guy comes in and sees I did the whole spiel on like this is the car wax, this is how you get your scratches out, this is how you kind of clear out your paint. And I was explaining to him like this doesn't replace paint. Like if your car has scraped your paint off, you're gonna have to get it repainted. So to test out something I didn't say, he straight up went to his car and keyed his own car to then test the wax on it to see if it worked. And he got a little bit on his finger and walked all the way out of car. So he literally got a little bit of the sample, which you're not supposed to do, took it, went all the way outside, comes back, he's like, it didn't work. I was just like, all right, let's take it easy. What didn't work? And he broke down exactly what he just did. I was just like, sir, why did you do this? I was trying to be as calm as possible. Like,
why have you done this? Why are you like this?
I was really trying to understand the rationale here. And the thing that was like a very important thing that they like taught us when we were doing this demo and stuff like that is we had to put a bunch of disclaimers in what we're talking about. It doesn't fix blah blah blah. We're not liable. We're not promised any magical cure. It's like it's good car wax, but car wax only can do what car wax does, kind of thing. And man, he was just yelling at me, like nonstop yelling at me. The Costco manager had to come over and be like, "Sir, what's the problem?" He just started like yelling at me. He's like, "What are you showing is it's complete crap," and blah blah blah. And I was just like, okay, like I don't know what to do at this point. Manager takes him away. But the best part about this is got me so much attention. I did the best sales on that day because of that fact. People started coming over to it, and then I started showing the demo like, "Oh, that's super cool." And I'm like, "Here's a box for you. Here's a box for you."
Just goes back. Just really, all press is good press. You know.
Yeah, but you have to be calm and collective in that moment. You cannot, get aggressive with someone who's aggressive. You have to calm them down because then they feel more comfortable. But yeah, I was just really confused because, man, it's hard for me to comprehend that somebody would be willing to sabotage their own car to test out a product, which I did directly tell them it's not going to do that, to then start yelling at me.
Yeah, I don't know why not just if you had a scratch on your car, test that out. Why would you?
Because he probably didn't have a scratch on his car, but
no, he did have scratches on his car. But this is the thing. He wanted to see a fresh scratch.
Also, what? So, I have so many questions. What? I'm curious. Obviously, you don't know the answers to this, but I'm curious where he scratched his car, how long the scratch was for his car.
All he did was leave and come back. It's not like I actually go and validate that he actually scratched his car.
Yeah, he probably would have fought you if you.
Oh no, 100%. I have no idea, and what I'm betting that he was trying to get out of it was free product, to be honest, because he was probably trying to turn it into this doesn't work, blah blah blah, and whatever his rationale was. Definitely not logical. Definitely saw some crazy stuff. I saw everything from people, stories that people were very comfortable telling me were just not appropriate for this show.
Yeah, dude, the amount of public sharing that you get when you work sales is a little scary.
I was, and the beauty of sales is that you always get the conversation on their problems in the day and all that kind of stuff, and you just kind of kick it and let them talk, and then just go on it. But it was rough days. 12 hours inside of a Costco, hearing all these things, selling dumplings to bed sheets to car wax. I can tell you that it really gave a kick in my ass about what I'd never want to do ever again in my life, and that's why we're here today.
Yeah.
Did you have any free dumplings though?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. All the time. I was taking bags on bags.
What was I have one more. My closing question is this, and it's a very important one because I'm very subconscious about this. What was the most amount of times that one single person went back for dumplings?
Okay, so whenever we came dumplings, it was like a seasonal, special inclusive thing, which was funny because all we did was switch Costco. So it wasn't like it was, if you knew what Costco we were going to go to, it was never like a special
Did you have groupies? Did you have dumpling groupies?
We did. So here's the thing.
What?
Here's the thing. People love these dumplings so much. They're Polish dumplings. They're really good.
Polish?
They're really, really, really good. And this is the part that I found hilarious. When we were selling them, I never knew how popular they were because I never bought them whenever I went. I never saw people demoing them and giving them out.
Yeah.
People were like, I haven't had this for 9 months. I gotta stock up for the rest of the year. And they bought 16 bags or 20 bags of dumplings, and they stored them. And I was just looking at their grocery cart I think you could fit one more bag in there.
Oh my god.
So yeah, it was pretty interesting. Same thing with the bed sheets. There were some special bed sheets and blah blah blah. Sure, high quality and everything like that. Did not do any false advertisement. I gave what the script was that they gave me, but even for them, when people saw them, they're like, man, I've been waiting for these to come back. These are amazing. I'm like, wow, this FOMO effect really, it's really something.
I think at this point in my life, I only go to Costco for oversized alcohol and the Beyond Burger patties because they sell. Here's the thing, that is a good fucking deal. You're talking about a good deal at Costco. That is, we stock up on those little burgers. So 4 patties normally, here goes my sales pitch. Here's the thing, 4 patties normally at a Sprouts or a Stater Brothers or wherever you go to buy groceries is gonna cost you I think $10 for 4 patties, right? For Beyond Meat. Expensive, but whatever. If you don't eat meat, it's what you got. At Costco, I think you get a whole nother one. So you get 3 for less. You get 3 for $9. So you get $1 off that thing. Oh man, when we saw that, I literally will put like 4 or 5 in my cart and just like put them in the freezer and like leave them there.
We get 3 packs of 4.
So 4 packs of 3. Like if you wanted, so there's.
You said $10 for 4 in a regular grocery
That's
store.
$2.50 per patty. Now you go to $3 a patty. I'm a little lost in the sales.
Oh no, sorry.
Yeah.
I lost you guys a little bit. So it's 2. It comes with 2 bundles, right? So it comes with 1 2-pack and 1 2-pack. So you get 4 patties.
1 2-pack and 1 2-pack.
Yeah, does that make sense? It makes sense in my brain. All right, let me explain this. Okay, so you get a 2-pack, right? But you get 2 of those in like the typical container.
So 2 2-packs.
Exactly. Yes, 2 2-packs. Yes.
Thanks, Costco.
Am I doing a good job? No, that's normal. In Costco, you get 3 2-packs.
Okay.
So you get 6. You get 6. All right. Look, it's going off the rails. It's going off the rails, and it's not my fault. You get 3 2-packs at Costco for less money than it would cost you to get 2 2-packs at a Sprouts. That's what I'm trying to say. It's a fantastic deal, and if you are a vegetarian or vegan, whatever you are, go for it. It's a really good deal. Get a Costco membership.
And we're not sponsored by Costco, but as you can see,
sponsor us.
We are a fantastic sales reps. So anybody who would love to sponsor us,
yeah,
let's get in some
anybody
talks.
who wants one 2-pack, one 2.
Anybody who wants their sales pitch to be completely confused to the audience, hit up Luis.
You ever get so excited that you just forget how to explain things?
Yeah,
that's how I feel about these Beyond Burgers and the amount of deal that you're getting with this whole thing. I think
it's probably the oversized alcohol.
No, I'm not confused about that at all. There's no confusion there. You just go in and you buy a freaking 1.5 liters of Jameson for what would cost you a 750 ml, yeah, for a regular bottle.
All right. So I think that was a great conversation. We're gonna close out the Brew podcast there. Definitely some interesting conversations. Yeah. We'll have another great episode again next week. But we really appreciate you tuning in, listening. Make sure to tune in for following episodes. Make sure to subscribe to our platforms on Twitch. Follow us, like us. And share our content. We're consistently going to be making more and more content, getting more guests on the show, so we can talk about different areas of business, the community, entrepreneurship, and the big picture.
So do you want to address the 2 potential guests that we have kind of in the pipeline right now?
So I think we can talk about the surface level topics that will be coming up in a new podcast. I would say the guests will make a little spiel about that kind of going forward. So as for topics, what would the 2 topics be focused on?
Yeah, so 2 topics we're going to focus on, no particular order. First one is going to be based on worker rights. So workers' rights as a whole within organizations and within small businesses up to enterprise level kind of thing. So workers' rights in general is going to be the main talking point with one of our guests. And the other one is going to be how COVID has affected marketing amongst community colleges and higher education as a whole. So that's really what our 2 upcoming big talking points are going to be.
Absolutely. So definitely stay tuned with the Brew, and that's a wrap.
Yeah, thanks for watching.